on Deanna's point, which I think is very interesting right now, the approach to this proposal may also be a key legacy piece, particularly on the economic side. What they're doing, and it's short term, these are not permanent elements that they're putting into place, whether it's on the mass expansion of the child tax credit, what they're doing on the earned income tax credit, several different provisions on the economic side. They're short term, but they are a paradigm shift in terms of how lawmakers, how an administration approaches economics, how they built this plan really from the ground up as opposed to trying to fit into a specific number. That is a different approach than we've seen before. So what it creates, I think, why you've seen congressional Democrats so buoyant on the Hill when they talk about this is whether it's Obamacare, whether it's the child tax credit, while they are short term, while they will need to be extended, just getting these into law, even for a short period of time, is a very big deal from a progressive approach to things. And whether or not those are extended in the future, I think those are fights Democrats are more than willing to have because they know you're more than likely to win if it's already into law. It's getting it there that's the hardest part, and Joe Biden has been able to accomplish that, Wolf.
Yes, he did. Ryan, not a single Republican in the House or the Senate ended up voting in favor of this bill, but overall, it seems to be pretty popular if you look at the public opinion polls, popular with the American public. On Wall Street today, there was a record high, an all-time record high. Take a look at these numbers. The Dow Jones closing above 32,000, up 464 points. Clearly, Wall Street was happy. Was this a tough vote for some Republicans?
Well, Wolf, they certainly didn't act like it if it was. I mean, there was not one Republican that even considered voting for this legislation, at least not publicly. And what's interesting is that all of a sudden, Republicans have found once again their, concern about runaway spending, something that they didn't seem to be all that concerned about during the 4 years of the Trump administration. But what Democrats are already telling us to look out for is a phenomenon where these Republicans who were very much opposed to this legislation will then go back to their home districts and their home states and then brag about the federal funding that will be injected into their economies because they are the federal representative for these different districts. And we've actually already started to see it happen. Senator Roger Wicker putting out a press release bragging about the amount of funding that's going to be put into this bill for small businesses and the restaurant industry. This despite the fact that he was very critical of this legislation and voted against it. So it will be interesting to see how Republicans play this in the coming weeks and days, especially after those checks go out, especially as people start to benefit from the child tax credit. This is real, tangible evidence of this bill that will impact people on a day-to-day basis. And it's something that they're going to have to go to their voters and explain, especially, as Phil points out, in 2 years when they go back to their voters and there's a conversation about whether or not to extend some of these benefits that are already in the package. They're going to have to vote on it again, Wolf, and much closer to an election.
Dana, you and I, and everybody probably remembers that former President Trump used to warn that if Biden is elected, the stock market is going to collapse. It's going to be a disaster. Today, an all-time record high on the Dow Jones Industrial Average. There's a divide. We've been talking a lot about it within the Republican Party, but they were completely unified in their opposition to this bill. Do you think this was a galvanizing moment for the GOP?
It gave them something to hold on to that was not Trumpism and that not the kind of tumult and the divide that Trumpism has created within maybe not the base out in the world, but within the conference and the House and the Senate on issues of personality. This was an issue of, as Ryan said, kind of back to the future. Republicans are talking about runaway spending, whereas, didn't hear much about that when their guy in the White House was doing just that. But one thing I just want to also add to what Ryan was saying with Senator Wicker touting the benefits of this bill that he voted against, you are going to see Republicans, you already are, and that's an example of it, trying to have it both ways, arguing the talking points and the messaging about how this is socialism and this is, the Democrats' agenda and it's Nancy Pelosi's liberal agenda. That is all about 2022 and trying to get the base riled up and also position themselves to try to take back the House and maybe the Senate as well. But at the same time, try to quietly tout some of the things that they know their constituents want. And we saw this very phenomenon back in 2009 when President Obama passed the big stimulus bill. It certainly helped to usher in the Tea Party, but at the same time, you saw Republicans touting projects that it created in their districts.
All right, guys, everybody stand by. We're going to have much more coming up on this just ahead.